So hi everyone. We're gonna start in about 2 minutes. I'm Sigrid. I'm gonna be the moderator here today, and I'm here with Patrick and Marco. We're gonna start up in a second. I just want to make sure that everyone is coming in at the moment. I'm also going to start a poll that we have that you can amuse yourself with while we while we wait to get started, and we are gonna of course share the results of that with you in a little while. So welcome everyone, and good to see so many people turned out. Really nice. And thank you for answering the poll as well. It's going to be interesting to see the results here. I know that AI is something that's on everyone's mind, but it's always interesting to see whether people are actually using it or just talking about it. So I can see a lot of results coming in now, and I see that there's someone who hasn't started using AI at all, and so that's really exciting to have you here, so you can get some inspiration on how you can apply it to optimize the user experience on your side. So it's actually 3 o'clock now, and I think we can get going. We have a lot of people already coming in, and I'm sure that the people who come in later will be able to catch up. So I'm going to close the poll now. If you haven't answered already, make sure that you get that final answers in. And there we go. Got another one in just in the last minute. So hi everyone. As I said, I'm Sigrid. I'm going to be your moderator today. I'm going to turn off the camera in a little while. I just wanted to, be able to say hi. But just for to have a good connection, I'm going to turn it off. And I'm here with Patrick and Marco. As I said, I'm going to let them introduce themselves. I'm hoping you guys can see my screen now. So as I said, this is the webinar, Find the Right Thing, Get the Real Thing, and we're going to talk about how AI can help you optimize user experience on online marketplaces. So as I mentioned, I'm here with Patrick, and Patrick, I'm going to let you introduce yourself.
Thank you very much, Sigrid. So I'm Patrick. I'm the CEO of Bezedo. I've been running this company for the past years. Bezedo is a company that's been around for 16 years, and we are essentially a company focusing entirely on content moderation, and especially focusing on content moderation for marketplaces. We have a global coverage. We have offices in Europe and in South America and Asia. I think that's about it for me and Bezedo, and hand over to Marco.
Yes, and Marco Velik is here as well, and I'm going to let you introduce yourself. I'm also going to mute my microphone while you guys are talking, just so we have the better voice. I can see there's some background noise.
Thank you, Sigrid, and thank you, Patrick. My name is Marco, and I'm head of data science in Styria Media Group. Styria is the biggest publisher in Southeast Europe, with operations in Austria, Slovenia, and Croatia, strong in the news and classifieds portals. Our data science team is formed in the early 2015, and now it numbers 10 data scientists and engineers, software developers working on different machine learning models, both for news and for classifieds online marketplaces. Also, we are working with some clients worldwide, and today we will present you how AI can benefit the classifieds industry.
Thank you, Marco. So you guys obviously know a lot about the AI, both you and Patrick, and I'm really excited to get started with this. But before we get started, I just wanted to make sure that everyone who are listening in knows that you can place questions for both Patrick and Marco at the sidebar. So you should be able to write it in over here. and it would be really good to get a lot of questions in if you have any. So just make sure you do that on an ongoing basis, and we will try and pick them up as we go along, but also handle them at the end if we have the time. We should have time for some questions at least. So with that being said, I'm going to hand over the presentation to Marco again. And as I said, I'm going to turn off my video just to ensure better connection. Over to you, Marco.
Thank you again, Sigrid. So for start, I would like just to briefly say some really in short something about the machine learning and AI in general and why it became a boom in the last 5 or 6 years. So basically what we are talking about machine learning or deep learning, how they are called, models, and which are basically neural networks, which is the technology 50 or 60 years old, so it's not in its basis, it's not a new technology. But what's happened in the last 5 or 6 years is that somehow we have this coincidence of at the same time becoming having a huge data available, mostly coming from big internet companies, which are collecting data not just from operational business, but also from the users. And we also have these advancements in computational resources, most notably GPUs. And with some creativity from academic community and research teams throughout the world, in some interesting algorithmic tweaks. All of this led to a perfect storm for these models and methods to come to the stage again and take over the hype. So basically what we are talking about is that these models are different from previously, how we previously did software. So now we are not programming explicitly line by line how the solution will be implemented, but rather we let these models, these networks, to learn the solution for the problem from the data. And all of big international companies, all of big IT companies, but also in other industries are using it. So we have big advancements coming from Google, Facebook, IBM, and all important players, Chinese giants. So everyone is already doing it. And this led to a new perception from the users on the market that users already now expect from products and services to be smart. So especially when talking about new generation, millennials, mobile first, and all these experiences, we are talking about smart solutions. So what we have done for classifieds industry, so we are covering both seller side and the buyer side. And on the seller side, we are doing it by automatic image categorization, ad categorization based on images. So we are trying to make it more easy for users to place an ad. So for example, here you can see several examples of images that users are uploading to Classifieds platform, and you can see below the images some suggestions for categories, and these categories are often hierarchical, which means that if users are not really familiar with hierarchy, complete hierarchy tree, it's often hard for users to find in which category to place an ad. And by utilizing this approach, where we suggest the category only based on the image, we were able to make even more than 70% saving in terms of time that is needed to place an ad, and on average to save almost 3 clicks per ad placement for an ad to be posted on the website. And regarding the other side of the selling process, the buyer side, there we have a challenge of finding an ad. And here we are actually trying to make it easier for users to find an item. So for example, here you can see that if we are searching for evening dress, these are results that we would get. This is example from Willhaben. And on the second image, you can see the result, what happens if we search for a red dress. But let's say that user wants to find a red evening dress. So if we enter this as an input in a text field, these are the results that we would get. But this is not actually what we wanted. What we want is that we want to be able to find all similar red dresses to the one that we have in mind. So on the next slide, we will be able to see. So this is query image. So it's the red evening dress. And now we can see the results from Willhaben app when applying the visual search feature on the system. And this is actually what we want to achieve, and in this way to improve the user experience, so not just limiting them to search on the textual custom text or some fields in filtering. And now we can see a short demo. So now we will show one small example how this can be done in the real system. So now I will share my screen with you. Okay. So this is Willhaben mobile web. This feature is also implemented in the app. So here I will open the Fashion Cam feature, and I can upload the image of, let's say, Louis Vuitton purse. And if I search, I will get all similar, visually similar Louis Vuitton purses, and I can, for example, choose this one, and I can even more, I can go from the existing ad, and I can search again, and then get other visually similar results. So this is one example of how we perform visual search on the real system. And now getting back to presentation. Okay, so to recap, with AI we can cover both the seller side and the buyer side. For seller to automatically categorize an ad to get easier and faster ad placement, and for the buyers to find visually similar items to get better matches and better user experience for search. This project was also awarded by one of the biggest players in AI, which is Nvidia. So the last year we won the Best Poster Award at GTC conference in Munich. And this is one additional confirmation that this is both scientifically relevant, but also even more important for us that it's relevant for users. And here you can see some funny examples when we took the picture of the iconic leather jacket of Nvidia CEO. These are the results from Willhaben, so that was pretty funny. Okay, thank you for your attention, and now I will let Patrick to explain you how you can make sure that this Louis Vuitton purse is actually the real one, right?
Thank you so much, Mark. It was very interesting to see how you work with AI more on the front end. And as Marcus said, I'll talk a little bit more on what we do in the back end, and especially around content. As I started out by saying before, Bezedo is a content moderation company, so essentially we focus on exactly that. Sigrid, if you move to the next slide, basically I will talk a little bit about the counterfeit problem and where AI can be a very good tool to help. It's also quite a hard problem to solve, so that's why we are illustrating that today. Essentially, the International Trademark Association estimates that over 460 billion worth of counterfeit goods are both sold and bought around the world. This corresponds to almost 2.5% of the world trade. So it's a huge market and a huge problem. And what we have seen over the last year is that brands are trying to tackle this more and more. They're essentially using lawsuits as their weapon to tackle these problems. And we've seen more of those cases. Some of the more famous one was the Alibaba settlement with the Kering last year. It's undisclosed how much Alibaba had to settle, but we know that they have agreed to work more closely with government agencies and law enforcement. Chanel won a claim against the sellers on Amazon. So some of the sellers had to pay up to 100,000 USD in fines. German car maker Daimler sued Amazon for selling a lot of Mercedes-Benz merchandise and spare parts that was counterfeit. And eBay have also had a lot of problems, and they launched eBay Authenticate during 2017. So we see a lot of the trends are moving to this becoming very costly for the marketplaces and a bigger problem and higher up on their agenda. From a report made by Redpoint, a brand protection agency, they have listed the top counterfeit sites, Alibaba being the #1. Perhaps a bit more surprisingly is that Facebook is in the number or the top 10, and actually grew with number of counterfeits with 10% during last year. If you moved, yeah, and it's essentially for us or for any content moderation company, fake product has always been a very high refusal reason for why we reject content. Over the last year, it was in the top 3, which is very high. And the typical products that if you move to the
Patrick,
next slide.
Can I just
Yes.
come in here, because we actually got a question here.
Oh, brilliant.
So we have the top 3 refusal reasons that fake products is consistently one of. So do you have an example of the others so we can kind of compare to what they are, the top ones?
Usually you have spam being a very high, having a very high refusal rate. We have a lot of duplicates being typically something that's also up there among those. And then I would say forbidden items, so items that should not be on that marketplace. Those are generally up there on the top as well, competing with fake products.
Thank you.
No problem. If we look at the types of product that we usually tend to reject, bags, the normal or the most common design brands being most of them. We're also seeing a lot of watches and shoes and other types of accessories in the top there, and increasingly also smartphones and those types of devices. And if we compare what we help our clients with compared to what's actually the government are seeing, and this is taken from a report from Europol, we can see that it correlates pretty well with what they're seeing, both by caseload and by value. So we see that the problem that we have in the marketplaces is reflected in the rest of the market as well. Yeah, and then last year, just an interesting fact there, we removed almost 1 million counterfeit items from our clients, and that was roughly 3.21% of the total items we rejected during that year. So it's a huge problem that our clients are facing. Thank you. And essentially a little bit more on how we do this and how you solve this problem. One of the key things that you need to do and to put in place, even if you're a moderation company like us, or if you're running your own moderation in-house, is to have a team with experts. We tend to really look for people who have interest in specific things, like a watch collector or someone that's very interested in designer bags, and we put them in these teams and make sure that they are the ones being ultimately the one taking decisions on the hard cases that we get. We also have a research team in-house that is constantly on top of the latest trends within counterfeit, what the fraudsters and counterfeit people are doing, because that's constantly evolving, making sure that we have good idea of how much a typical item should cost, so we can make sure that we have a good protection in that sense. On top of that, it's a lot about knowledge sharing between moderators, different teams of moderators, and in different geographies, to ensure that the knowledge is spread on new trends, and it's super important that you facilitate that. Then if we move a little bit more to the more technical, or the mechanics of this, when it comes to all moderation, it's about really making sure that the manual and the expert teams are viewing as few ads as possible. So we're working with a lot of filters coupled with our AI to ensure that we only send items that we think has a very high probability of being counterfeit to our expert teams, so they can really spend as much time as possible on those cases. And if we move to the next slide, I can show you a little bit how we, in a similar way to Styria, are using AI in order to make sure that we find the ads that are most likely to be counterfeit. So this is our computer vision that essentially has found a watch. In this case, it can detect the brand, and we can also see that it has found some duplicates of this, and we then pair this with our filters to see what kind of prices this has, and all types of other data signals that we can get on this user. We can look at the user behavior through AI, and in doing this, we can either through AI take a decision, or we escalate this to the manual team of experts that will take the decision. That was essentially what I had from a moderation perspective, and how we use AI to mitigate the counterfeit problem for our clients. So I hand over to you, Sigrid, for some questions.
Yeah, so now we've gotten some questions in, which is really nice. If you haven't already put in your questions, make sure that you do that now. I also just wanted to say that I'm going to share the poll results after the questions, so stick around for that. But first of all, there was someone who was interested in knowing how these two services complement each other. So this is kind of a question for both of you, I guess.
Mark, do you want to start?
Yes, sure. So I would say that these services are quite complementary in terms that our technology is mainly focused on interpreting semantically and visually what it is on the image. But since our services are actually coming directly from our use case, and this is the online secondhand sales and the data that we have in our systems, we are pretty much aligned to cover the distribution of the data to make it to make these models really super accurate in terms of, for example, recognizing the type of the mobile phone and the model only based on the image. But we are not experts in detecting fraudulent ads or identifying scams and stuff like that. So this is not, we are not solving this part of the business, and this is what Besedo is doing actually quite good, right?
Yes, I fully agree with you. I think we complement each other in a very, very good way, where we are really focusing on the moderation part of and in the back end. And that's what we look forward to, this partnership that we are now starting. Now we cannot hear you, Sigrid.
Sorry, I muted myself so there was no background noise.
No
we
problem.
have a small question about counterfeits and regional. Do we know if there's any changes or any specific regions where there are more counterfeits, or is that like a global problem?
No, it's a global problem, but we see different trends everywhere, and not to go into too many details, but obviously there's a big difference between South America and Europe towards Asia and US, and I think that's where a company like us have a bit of a benefit, where we are actually present in a lot of those markets, and we can see the different trends, and we can share that knowledge within internally to give our clients the best support possible.
I have a question for you, Marco. Why would you use a solution like Styria's and not a third-party one like the Google Vision API? What's the benefits?
Well, the thing is that some general APIs, like the ones from Google and other big companies or vendors specialized in computer vision solutions, is that these APIs can recognize giraffes and chimpanzees on the images, for example, but they are not well suited for this fine-grained classification of real-world objects that you can typically find in-house and that users are typically selling when talking about second-hand goods. And the other thing is that these third-party publicly available models and APIs, they are often trained on the datasets like ImageNet or Google Open Images dataset and similar datasets which are publicly available, which again have different kinds of data distribution. And these models, these machine learning models that we use tend to really fit the data pretty well. And if you train the models on one kind of data and then you apply it in the other use case, it just won't work. And the other thing is that we are creating solution specifically for classifieds, which means that we are covering categories which are organized in hierarchical trees. So if we are not able, if the model is not really confident in recognizing the exact model of the mobile phone, then it will just, there is another machine learning model that will roll out up in the hierarchy tree and say, okay, it's a mobile phone. I'm not sure whether it's this model or that model, but it will roll up in the tree. And the reason for this is because we want to optimize users' clicks. We want to save as much clicks as possible in navigating the tree. So this is the optimization function, and not just the accuracy that is usually a case in computer vision solutions.
So it's about accuracy. You get the better accuracy when you use something that's tailor-made for the purpose.
Yes, exactly. We get better accuracy. We get more fine-grained results, and it's fitted exactly for the hierarchy tree that the classifieds. Each and every has a different hierarchy tree, so we can adjust for every single hierarchy tree of every classified that wants to use this service.
And maybe I can ask you this then, Patrick. It's about accuracy using the Besedo services as well, right? What is our accuracy on counterfeit detection?
Well, accuracy is, if we look at from an AI perspective, it's always a function of how much data we have and what kind of rules and how difficult that is. We tend to be 95% plus as a general solution combining our AI, our filters, and our expert teams. So that's roughly where we are, and then it's a bit different from different markets and in different geographies, and in relation to certain types of content or certain types of brands are easier to detect than others, and so it's a bit different. But in order to get those really high accuracy, you need to have a solution which combines the cutting edge tech with the human expertise. That's at least what we have learned over the 16 years that we've been in business.
Yeah. So, so just following up on this, because we talked a little bit about expertise today. Why is it so important with research and expertise in order to find not just counterfeit, but good moderation in general?
Well, essentially, it's an always changing game. So the counterfeit people are always changing their methods. The same goes for fraudsters, which is a similar problem that we tackle. So in order to stay ahead of that, we need to research. We need to be to see what's happening. And the same obviously goes into the AI, and our data science teams are always researching the kind of the newest algorithms to use, how the AI should be structured, and what data signals we should use and what we shouldn't use, and so a lot of it is about research.
I think there was a question here about research actually. Do we have a dedicated team for research? Is that something, or is it just done as part of the everyday?
No, we at Becedo we have that, and yeah, at Becedo we have a dedicated research team. We have a data scientist research team, and we also have a research team for looking at for supporting our services team.
Great. I think we can manage one more question. There's one more well, there's a couple of more questions, but I'll shoot one over to you, Marco. There's someone asking, how fast is the response time from the AI on search?
On search, our average response time is 50 milliseconds. And this includes comparing the image, which is the query image, with more than 3 million active ads on Willhaben. So we do comparison of the image, one image with 3 million other ads, and returning back the results in on average 50 milliseconds. As we have realized during the field testing, actually this response time of the machine learning model itself is just a small fraction of the whole user experience. More time it's spent on the image upload and download of the other parts of the app and so on. So it's really fast.
Great. Thank you. So just before I know I promised to share the results of the poll, and I will. Just before, I just wanted to give people some information. We're gonna upload this webinar in a couple of days. It should be up on our website. You will receive a mail when that happens. We also have created a small checklist for how to set up a good counterfeit filter with it's made for Implio, our tool, but it's also very handy for anyone who wants to set up a good filter, automation filter for catching counterfeits. So that will be sent out to you as well right after this webinar. And we will also, I want to say thank you to Marco and Patrick. I'm going to share the poll results now. I don't know, Marco or Patrick, if you want to comment on them. If not, then thank you so much for attending. So you can see here we have 25 people who, well, I hope you can see this. We have 25% of people who use AI to improve search experience. We have 25% who use it for better content moderation. No one is using it for placing ads. So then you should definitely talk to Styria, because they should be able to help you there. And we have 50% who use it for something else than the above options. So definitely those 50% could also benefit from talking to either us or Styria. And then we have 25% who is not using it at all, So again, reach out to us after the webinar. I'm sure we can help you set something good up that will help you get more users to your site and users to stay on your site. I don't know, Patrick, Marco, do you want to comment on this? Marco, do you want to start?
Well, I would just say that there are plenty of opportunities to embrace AI in online marketplace, not just for ad placing and searching, but also for content moderation, like Patrick said, and also to support the customer service. So I strongly believe that everyone who is aiming to be the market leader on their specific markets should consider this technology. And like we have seen in our operations, as soon as you grab under the surface of all the different parts of the complex marketplaces business and use cases, there are just a lot of ideas that come up where machine learning can really be beneficial for every business.
Yeah, I fully agree with Mark there, and just adding on, we sometimes hear clients that feel that they don't have enough data in order to use AI, and we companies like us have a lot of solutions for that it does not require a lot of training data. There are kind of out of the box filters based on AI that we could support with. So definitely there's no excuse not to start embracing this technology.
And there's a last minute question that came in here from Alex. I just want to throw that in before we end. It's to Patrick. Could you tell us another use of backend AI? So I don't know if you just want to take half a minute answering that before we say goodbye.
So other types of use, could you repeat the question?
Could you tell us another use of backend AI? So how else could we use the technology that we are developing at Bezedo?
So essentially, we are mostly using the technology for content moderation, and in doing that, we are making sure that we help the client automate as much of the manual volumes that they usually take care of through their manual team. So that's essentially how we do it today.
Yeah, I think maybe also we can just add that, you know, it's not just for counterfeits, it's not just for scams, it's also for improving. Yeah. It's also for proving quality content, etc., etc.
Of course. So counterfeits is merely one subset of the problems that we solve. And I completely agree with you, Sigrid.
Thank you, everyone who attended. It was really good to see so many people show up. Yeah, I guess thank you, Patrick. Thank you, Marco, for being here and talking to all of us.
Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you, Sigrid.